Hi, and welcome to our next seminar in our Planté seminar series. This series is brought to you by Planté and ASPB. My name is Melanie Binder, and I'm one of your hosts for today's seminar, where we'll be discussing YouTube can be on YouTube, learning how to create engaging science communication videos. We're here today with Molly Edwards, who is a PhD candidate in the Kramer Lab at Harvard University, where she studies development and evolution of columbine flowers. Molly is also the creator and host of Science in Real Life on YouTube. Molly is joined today by Rishi Masalia, who is a graduate student at University of Georgia in the plant biology department. And before we get started, I'm just going to go over a couple things just to make sure you get the most out of attending today's seminar. Feel free to ask any questions using the chat box in the Go To Training Control panel on the right. These questions will be read periodically by Mary Williams during the seminar as we transition from one topic to the next. A recording of the seminar along with any associated materials will be made available within the next few days. And if you need any technical assistance during this webinar, please feel free to email me at melaniebinder@mbinder@aspb.org, and I'll put my email address in the chat box. And now I'm going to go ahead and turn the seminar over to Molly and Rishi.
Hey, everyone.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks, Molly. Thanks, Melanie. And thank you, Molly, for joining us today on this another seminar.
Of course. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah. So I think we're just going to dive right in. And if you could just kind of briefly describe what your YouTube channel, Science IRL, is.
Yeah, so Science in Real Life is hopefully showing my viewers what science and what being a scientist is like in real life. So on every episode, I usually have a guest scientist on the show, and we do an experiment together in the lab or the field, and we talk about the data that that experiment generates and how it's used in their broader research program. And you know, hopefully the experiments we're doing are kind of related to a concept that a high school student might encounter in a science textbook.
Nice. So for this seminar series and this interview, I kind of want to cover like why you started Science IRL, and then we'll kind of dive into some of the specifics about YouTube and some of the specifics about Science IRL a little bit later. So why start Science IRL? Why do you think science communication is so important?
Yeah, so you know, I started Science in Real Life a couple years after I graduated from college, and I think it came at a point where I was realizing that I was totally passionate about pursuing discovery science for my research. So sort of basic, fundamental, how are plants working, how are they developing, how have they evolved, how are they building their bodies. And I was really excited to be pursuing that, and I knew I was going to be doing that probably in graduate school and for my career, but I also I knew that that meant that my research wouldn't be immediately applicable to the public, and I have always, you know, grown up in doing, you know, volunteering and service, and I really wanted to make sure that that was still a part of my work, and so I thought that maybe doing some kind of science communication or outreach project could be a way for me to do that, and to have my science still help people directly. You know, I also sort of selfishly, I was doing a lot of art and theater and in college, and I really missed sort of having those creative opportunities like right at my fingertips in college when you graduate. I was working as a lab technician. There weren't, you know, I wasn't really sure how to sort of satisfy that those creative outlets that I was looking for. So that was a part of it as well, for sure.
So, right. So I also do science communication, and I understand that the creative aspect is something that you have to do because you don't really get a lot of opportunities to do it in kind of like a lab setting, right? You're by the books kind of doing the research. And so I guess one of the questions I had for you was a YouTube channel is kind of a big endeavor, right? It has a lot of moving parts. You have to create a lot of content. So did you just jump to YouTube channel, or did you have some kind of science communication stepping stones? How did that transition work for you?
Yeah, you know, I did jump right into YouTube. Yeah, it does have a lot of moving parts, but I will say that I did have some experience in science video production from college and even before that. So I grew up in a 4-H program, and so I don't know if you're familiar with 4-H, but it's a youth. Yeah, it's a youth development program that's run through the land-grant institutions in a given state. So I grew up in New York State, and the land-grant institution there is Cornell University. And so in every county, Cornell University has an extension office, and they run a lot of programs and like disseminate the research and stuff coming out of Cornell to the community, and their youth program is 4-H. And so traditionally it was in a lot of like agricultural estates where youth would learn how to do farming and raise their animals and show their animals at the fair and like learn some good life skills like that. But it's really transitioned into a STEM and volunteer and leadership and youth development program. And so in my county, we actually had a video production club. And so I learned how to, like, I got trained in how to use Adobe Premiere Pro, which is like one of the main professional video editing softwares. I learned a lot about video production through that. And then in college, I worked on several science video projects through both the state Cornell Cooperative Extension Program and some other professors who needed to hire people to make science videos for them. So I did have some experience before.
Would you say that the video production experience that you got, you know, in undergrad was necessary for starting a YouTube channel? Like, what did it help a lot?
I mean, it helps, like, you know, that I sort of had a slight understanding, but I still had so much to learn when I started science in real life. And so, I mean, I think, it certainly helped, but you definitely don't need to know how to use professional editing software or anything. There's so many tools out there now, like most, you know, if you buy a laptop, it's going to come with some basic video editing software that you can do a lot with, and that are like, you know, really easy sort of drag and drop kind of things. So definitely do not need that kind of experience.
Did you have any other experience? So when I was doing science communication, or when I first started doing science communication 4 or 5 years ago, I kind of waded into the water a little bit and just started writing blogs, and eventually went up to doing, you know, video and podcasting after a couple of years. Did you have any writing experience before this, or was it just the production before you started Science IRL?
No, I mean, I didn't do any writing like science for public dissemination. I mean, I did, you know, like I would write up projects or just like sort of the experience that you get in, you know, being in college and, you know, having to do a lot of writing assignments and stuff. But I did not have any formal written science communication experience, and it was a learning curve. Like, I mean, at some of my earlier videos, I'd be like, oh, I could have explained that a little bit better, you know. So you're always like building skills and figuring it out as you go on.
Yeah. So then, did you just learn how to disseminate the science as you, like, on the job, right? Just during the channel, as more videos are coming out.
Yeah, and sort of, you know, and I would write, I always write scripts or outlines before, and just like, okay, like, is this going to be too advanced? You know, how does this play when we're reading it? Just doing a basic read through, sort of testing out how things sound beforehand, going through a lot of different drafts and versions before we actually shoot the episode. So
cool. So I also know that a YouTube channel, like, so I guess specifically with your YouTube channel, from the videos that I've seen, you go on location at multiple places, right, all across the country. So how did you afford to do that?
Well, we should take a sec to talk about the amazing Plant BLOOME grant from ASPB. So that's the Plant Biology Learning Objectives Outreach Materials and Education Grant. And there's really nothing like it out there for scientists who want to do science communication. It's a pretty substantial grant to start up a new science education project. And so I will say I was doing science in real life for a couple of years before I had a grant. And so in those cases, I was shooting locally. So I was based in New York at the time, and so I was shooting with scientists that I knew in New York. And, you know, borrowing equipment, like, you know, like, oh, can we borrow this camera for a day, or can we borrow this mic for a day? And then once we got this grant, we were able to purchase a set of professional production equipment, and also to travel all over the country to film plant biologists. So yeah, we've been to UC Berkeley, we've been to the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, we've been to the Donald Danforth Plant Science Center, up to Cornell, and then of course we film a bunch at Harvard, where I'm based now.
Nice. And so, so as a plug for Plant BLOOME, I believe ASPB is accepting Plant BLOOME applications for 2018. Yes. So I think applications will be accepted until from the 1st of December until the 2nd of April.
Yeah.
I believe are the dates. So if any of our listeners are interested in looking up the Plant BLOOME grant, just Google ASPB BLOOME grant, and it should take you right to that page.
And as a PI, I am happy to, like, and it's even a condition of the grant that we can like talk to you guys and help you with your applications and everything. So feel free to reach out if you have any questions about the application process.
Did the Bloom grant help you with like editing at all, or was it just travel?
It was, yeah, so the Bloom grant is meant to kind of fund sort of resources that will be sustainable. So for example, buying production equipment that'll last me forever, and being able to travel and kind of build a network of collaborators all over the country was really exciting. And now that I have have made these videos at all these different institutions, hopefully I can keep those connections alive and return in the future. Yeah, the editing it just sort of stayed as is. I actually, in the beginning of Science in Real Life, I hired an editor just because it's so time consuming, but I just started doing the editing as well. So,
yeah. Nice.
Yeah.
So one of the questions I have, since I have never personally started a YouTube channel, but I have always dared to dream about starting my own in the future, potentially. So what are some of the benefits that a YouTube channel gets you? Like, what's the benefit of the format that a YouTube channel brings you that other science communication formats like podcasting or blogging don't get you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I would say, that if you're considering starting a science communication project, it's best just to do what feels right for you. So if you love writing, it's great to start a blog. If you're a podcast addict and want to try your hand at that, you should go for it. I mean, I love YouTube because you can show these experiments happening. You can really get a sense for the personalities and sort of the human qualities of these guest scientists that I have on the show, and you can really get to know them as people. But other, like, as if you love the medium you're communicating through, you'll be able to convey those things through whatever format you like. What I love about YouTube is that there's an incredible, just like a magical educational YouTube creator community. And so I love being on YouTube because there are a lot of other educational creators on there, and we support each other and give each other shout outs on Twitter and collaborate, and we can ask for feedback on old videos and stuff. And I really think that is an advantage to YouTube, is that there's this great supportive community there.
Yeah, no, that's a good. I hadn't actually thought about that. That's a good point. There are a lot of educators on YouTube already, so it's kind of this built-in community that you can just plug yourself into.
Yeah.
How do you get, so whenever you create a video, how do you get feedback for that video?
Yeah.
Are there assessments or surveys that you send out? And if there are, how do you actually send them out and then get responses back?
That's a good question. So, yeah, so there are a lot of built-in analytics on YouTube, so that they can give you like
platform itself.
Yeah, it's actually they're watching you, so they can give you like gender breakdowns, locality for each video, like where are people watching from, who's watching, how long did they watch each video, like are they watching the whole thing, are they staying for the whole thing? So there are analytics there, and then I'll also ask for feedback from my colleagues and from people who don't have a science background, or from other educational YouTubers, like, hey, what did you think of this video? But what was really exciting about the BLOOME grant is that there's an assessment component to the grant. And so I actually got to work with educational researchers at our Center for Teaching and Learning at Harvard, and we designed an assessment to send out to about 20 New England area high schools. And so we gave the students these surveys that asked about their sort of attitudes towards science and scientists, and like how they perceive those things before they had watched any episodes of Science in Real Life, and then we had them watch a whole bunch of episodes, and then they took the survey again. So we're in the middle of analyzing all that data because we have about 700 surveys.
Whoa.
Yeah, 700 high schoolers participated. So I'm really excited to analyze that data. So we'll see what it says. Yeah.
Yeah, that's super cool though, because like you get direct feedback. You're actually impacting high school students, and then actually assessing their.
Yeah, it'll be interesting because there's also when we set out to design those surveys, we tried to do like a literature review to see how people are researching this topic, and it's actually there aren't a lot of it's difficult to assess informal educational interventions. And so we're not sure what the data is going to tell us, if it's going to tell us anything at all, because there's so many other factors that these students are experiencing every day that might kind of influence the results of those surveys. But we're still curious. And I'm really glad that that Science in Real Life made it into that many high school classrooms. It's really exciting.
Nice.
So,
No, it's awesome.
yeah.
So I feel like it's obligatory for me to ask this question, considering that we're talking about YouTube. YouTube is notorious for YouTube comments. How do you respond to what I'm assuming is the wide range of YouTube comments that your videos get?
Yeah, so I will say, and this is going to be like an open invitation for the trolls, but my viewership is small enough that like my channel is still circulating sort of among pro-science good people.
Okay, so you're not attracted to the trolls yet.
I'm not, yet. So I'm sure once the channel builds a little bit, it'll sort of cross paths with some more unsavory characters. But I do get every once in a while just kind of haranguey like but it's nothing like terrible yet.
Okay.
What I love is like when people have really good follow-up questions to videos and like answering those and sort of having a cool dialogue about science. That's definitely the majority of the comments so far.
Right.
And YouTube is also like does sort of recognize spammy comments and will flag them before they publish them on your channel, so you can sort of have some, and then you can also, you have as a creator of your channel, you have total control over comments, so you can delete them if they're offensive, you can flag them, you can report the people who say those things. Yeah, so it is like, and on some of the really big science channels, it is a huge problem, and they have to spend so much time going through comments and sort of
that was my follow-up was how much time do you take to respond to comments? Right.
So far, just because my channel is still on the small side, like it's not a huge thing, but it's definitely something I'll have to consider as it grows.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Cool. So I think, Melanie, that might be a natural stopping point if we want to pause for questions. If people have questions.
I've got a few questions lined up. One of them was, how do you tap into this educators community on YouTube? Because it's not something that I, as a YouTube viewer, are really aware of. How do you find them and how do you communicate with them?
Yeah,
is there a secret channel?
No, I mean, so, oh gosh, there's so many fantastic channels out there. Maybe I'll just list a few of my favorites and you guys can go from there. But, and also, there are like really great lists online. If you just Google like educational YouTube channels, you'll get a list of like 100 people that you should check out. But for my plant people out there, you guys should check out Brilliant Botany. That's a fantastic plant-focused YouTube channel. The Brain Scoop with Emily Grassley is like one of my all-time favoriteest science YouTube channels. Let's see. Crazy Aunt Lindsay does really great like DIY science experiments. Yeah, she's great. Let's see. There's the channel's on hiatus right now, but there's a great one from PBS Digital Studios called Gross Science that has a lot of like fun, gross things about the natural world that you can explore. Let's see. Neurotransmissions is a great one if you're interested in neuroscience. So yeah, I mean, it's endless. There's so many great channels out there. Yeah, so just honestly, just Google educational YouTube channel, and we're all on Twitter, so like there's a great conversation usually going about on Twitter about the educational science communication community. There's a great Twitter account called I Am SciComm, and it's a rotational like curation channel Twitter handle, which means that like once a week a new person is taking over that Twitter handle. And it's always by science communicators. And so they're talking about their science communication platform and what they're working on. So that's a really great way to meet new science communicators. I know recently there was a huge flurry of activity on Twitter because Emily Grassley, who does the Brain Scoop, she gets emails like all the time being like, where are the women creators who are creating science content on YouTube? Because it looks at first appearance like it might be a male-dominated kind of thing, and she got like 900 replies from women creators, like educational content creators out there. So that's like pinned to her Twitter page, and you can go get a great list. And there are a lot of other people curating awesome lists of fantastic communicators. So
That's great. Okay, I'm going to combine the next two questions in one, which
Yeah.
is how long should a science communication video be, and what's the key point to hook your audience into the video?
Oh, such good questions. All right. Gosh, my videos have ranged in length from like 4 minutes to 10. I wouldn't go over, like there is like a YouTube attention span, which is like a few minutes. But there are some people who are doing really great long form stuff. My videos tend to be on the longer side because we're doing a full experiment, and sometimes we're condensing an experiment that takes like 2 days into 3 minutes or something like that. So when I'm editing, often my videos I'll like throw everything we filmed into the video, and it'll be 15 minutes long, and then I'll cut until it's or between 5 and 7 has been my kind of ideal. And yeah, hooking the audience. This is something that I kind of had to discover and learn too, because at first I would just sort of start my videos with like an opening title, like little animation and song that I have on my videos, but we started doing cold opens, which is where you just like open on a scene and we'll say something really catchy or exciting about the episode, or like give you a sneak peek of one of the really cool sciencey things that's coming up in the episode. Then we'll cut to the opening title and song, and then we'll sort of start from the beginning. So for example, where I'm editing an episode right now that'll come out probably in December or January, and it's with my friend Jess, who is a tree physiologist, and so we had to go up in the bucket truck like hundreds and hundreds of feet into the canopy, and so the cold open of the episode is like us like going up in the bucket truck, and then we do the whole opening and intro and talk about what she's doing, and then later we actually like go and do the experiment up in the canopy and stuff. So yeah, trying to find the hook is like definitely important. Yeah.
Cool. Is that it for this round of questions?
Who did we lose?
I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah, no, sorry, I couldn't find my unmute button. So the last one I think is kind of similar, which is how do you make a video interesting for the audience? And I think you've got the hook, right? Any other advice on how to make it interesting?
Yeah, I mean we try to we have we try to do some like kind of show the fun and human side of science, right? That's like really what this channel is about. And so, if we can show as much goofiness and sort of joy in our work as we can, like an enthusiasm, that's totally key. You gotta love what you're doing if you want to talk about it. And we have animations that kind of clarify some of the concepts, and those are those are super engaging. One of my friends will write some pretty great jokes for our scripts, and so having a sense of humor and lightheartedness in your work is great too. But and science is like people are naturally curious, and so if you're showing really cool science, like your videos are going to be great. Yeah.
Great, awesome, thanks. Let's keep going.
Okay, awesome. So to kind of segue from those questions, to dive in a little bit into what Science IRL is actually doing on an episode by episode basis.
Yeah.
So I was curious as to how you choose the topics for your videos. Like the plant biology as a field is extremely diverse. So how do you choose to pick a topic, and then when you know you're going to release a video based on that topic?
Yeah. So recently I've been going by who the guest scientist is. So I'll seek out guests to be on the channel, and then once they've said they're on board and they're excited about it, we'll have a preliminary meeting where they tell me some of the projects that they're working on, and then we'll kind of pick which one is might be most conducive to make a short and snappy YouTube episode. I think in the beginning, my first ever episode was about DNA, and I kind of wanted to start from a basic, this is sort of a fundamental thing for molecular biology, and we're going to be talking about DNA a lot. And so that episode is made, and now if I ever, if we're talking about it, I can refer back to those sort of basic intro videos that I made in the beginning. Right. But yeah, it's mostly about the guests and what stories they want to tell. There have been a few, for example, I knew I really wanted to make an episode about GMOs and how they're made, and really show we're in a lab, we're gonna make one, here's how it works. But I was really nervous about doing that because that is a very sort of scary topic to tackle, especially on the internet. And so, but then, you know, Cornell reached out to me and wanted to do some episodes at the Boyce Thompson Institute, and they put me in touch with a scientist who was working on genetic engineering all the time. And she's like, I really want to make an episode about GMOs. And I was like, oh, great. This was like sort of a perfect timing where she's like really dedicated to doing this. And it's something I wanted to do. And that was kind of a nice sort of coming together of like those things.
Nice. So how do you choose your guests, which then, you know, reflect what the episode's going to be about? Are a lot of people contacting you like Cornell did with Boyce Thompson, or are you seeking out people that you know to be guests? How does that work?
It's up until now it's been a lot of people that like just my plant people who have been who are all over the country now, who I like met during I did my undergrad at Cornell. I worked as a lab technician at the New York Botanical Garden and at NYU, and so now all those people from those labs are kind of scattered across the country. And our people I met through, you know, interviewing for grad school and all that good stuff. So but then, you know, for example, I knew someone at Illinois. I was like, hey, do you want to make an episode? She was like, yes. And I was like, you know, while we're out there, we might as well make another one. Do you have a colleague who might want to do another? And so she put me in touch with another person. Cornell had reached out because they knew that a bunch of Cornell alums were working on this project, and they wanted to make some episodes at the Boyce Thompson Institute. Yeah, and so now it's been kind of a mix of people contacting me and me reaching out. So
nice. So I think we've kind of danced around this question a little bit earlier, but how deep do you go into the science of what you're talking about, right? Mm-hmm. I guess to say, how sciencey do you get for these videos?
So, you know, I want to show like real research and real experiments, and in order to understand those things, we do go into some detail. And so I'll spend some time in the beginning doing an introduction to make sure that if someone is coming into this episode cold, they might have like at least get some idea of what's going on. I think if you want to understand like 100% of the content in these episodes, it's like probably the audience needs to have like roughly at least a high school education in science. But you know, it's funny. I sort of started out intending for that to be my audience, like people with high school levels of background, but then like middle school teachers have come up to me and been like, hey, like these videos, you know, I think they'd be really great. I just gave a talk at an elementary school and showed some videos to the students there, and they were super into it. So I think like there are sort of levels that you'll get from, you know, it's really exciting to like realize that my audience could be much broader than I thought before.
Yeah, so that was my follow-up question is, well, like, how do you cater the science to your target audience, which it seems like your go-to target audience is like high school students, but obviously anyone can watch YouTube.
Yeah, right. So. Yeah. So I mean, some of it is really making, you know, making these resources available to teachers, and getting them into classrooms, doing talks at high schools and reaching out to those communities. But I think what's really, so like, and I should say, like, I really do have two kind of goals with this channel in terms of what I'm trying to like convey and communicate, and one of them is you know, I mean, often schools like don't have the time or the resources to show these experiments and how these science topics that are getting taught like are, you know, used by real scientists. And it's hard, you know, you can't necessarily pile a big science class into a tiny little lab, and you know, so it's really important to show how those topics are coming to life and are relevant to science, you know, because if you see something in a dusty old textbook, you're like, is this really what scientists are doing today? And it's like, yes, and like, it looks so cool when we do it in the lab. And then the other thing is showing scientists at work and like, what does it look like to be a scientist? Because, you know, students, they know what it's like to be a teacher. They see their teachers every day. They know what it's like to be a doctor, a banker, a plumber. Like they interact with these professions and sort of have a sense of what it's like to do those things, but you never see scientists at work. And like, what is, you know, who are these people in the labs that are doing this research? And you know, there's still such a frustrating prevalence of like, you know, scientists being portrayed as, you know, sort of reclusive weirdos in pop culture, and it's like, like we're like, you know, regular humans, we're fun. So like in these videos, you know, you can see you know, a Harvard professor talk about her amazing research, but then you're also going to see her like goofing off and riding a lab cart down the hall while I push it, and like, you know, so I mean, or like, you know, we do a silly science dance around the lab while we're waiting for an incubation. So it's, I think that's so important, and those are types of things that are accessible to people without any science background,
Regardless
right?
of,
It's just
yeah,
like,
for sure.
yeah, it's like look at these humans having a good time in the lab, like yeah. So I think that's really important.
Reclusive weirdos.
But it's true, right? I mean, it's yeah.
I mean, I'm a weirdo. I don't know if I'm reclusive about it, but yeah, no, I actually absolutely agree, right? So there's always this conversation about diversity of scientists, and you know, because scientists are so much more than just the stereotypical, you know, old potentially like old white guy, right?
Yeah.
And
yeah,
so
no, totally.
it's absolutely I love the fact that Science IRL is creating these videos to kind of give a sense of not only humanizing science, but yeah, a breadth of what, you know, who these scientists are.
Yeah.
No, so
yeah,
it's
no,
something,
totally.
right? Within my own science communication organizations, it's something that we try to portray as well, right? To just, you know, have people of color, have women scientists, just be there and just say what you do, because usually they don't get a platform to do that. So
yeah, no, as science communicators and as anyone who like educators, science communicators, professors, like we really need to be focusing on these like daily acts of representation and whose stories are we telling, whose voices are we elevating in our communication and in our education endeavors. And this shouldn't be considered activism, this should be the norm, right? Like we should this should be something that we do all the time when we talk about science. And so and it's something like, you know, it's not something I did well to begin with. If you look at my first episodes, I didn't do a good job of representation. And, you know, those guest scientists are my dearest colleagues and friends, and they'll be the first people to agree with me that, like, yeah, you could have done a better job. And so everything after that is, like, you know, making sure that the guests that I feature are elevating people traditionally underrepresented in science. Because when you know, as a student and as a young person, when you are continually told stories of scientists who don't represent you, you slowly, you know, it's drilled into your brain that science is not a welcome place for you, and that, you know, that it doesn't have people who look like you, and it's defeating, it's exhausting. And so as people who talk about science, we have to do better, and we have to put in that effort, and it really doesn't take that much more effort to make sure that you're telling those stories. Yeah, so, you know, if you're the next time you're preparing a lecture or writing a blog post, just like keep in mind, like, who's are you getting quotes from? Whose stories are you telling? If you find this historical famous scientist, like, who is the assistant whose story didn't get told? It's probably not that hard to find. So, and, you know, elevate those voices. Yeah.
Right. And especially if the videos are being catered towards younger students, right? So then you're kind of, you know, teaching them younger that, you know, science is an open and welcome place for everyone.
Yeah, totally.
Right, because I like the idea of the daily activities of a scientist, right? Because a lot of people, as you said, will, you know, see bankers or physicians or whomever, but you don't really interact with scientists all that much. And so as science communicators, you're right, it's our job to go out there and convey these stories. Yeah, no, that's a good point. And I think it might be harder to do that in other forms, like you know, just strictly writing or strictly audio, because you don't really connect, right? YouTube has that visual connection with people.
Yeah, but it is, you know, it can. I was at a science communication conference this summer, and our keynote speaker was Ed Young, who is a science writer for The Atlantic, and
I was going to mention Ed's thing.
Yeah, and so his whole thing is, like, he realized that he wasn't sourcing his quotes from a representative group of scientists, and so he had the data of, like, before he sort of started making an active effort and whose quotes he was sourcing, and he managed to sort of totally change the representation game in his science writing just from making that active choice. So.
Right. Yeah, I think it went from, like, roughly 25% women scientists to almost 50-50, or exactly 50-50 now.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so I think we're ready for another stop if there are questions that people have.
Yeah.
Okay. One of the questions is, when you get started, how do you connect to your audience? How do you start to build the viewers?
Yes, that is a great question, and that is something that I like whenever I get feedback from people is like something that they're always like, yeah, you need to put more effort into building your outfit, because I love creating the content and doing it and like doing all the creative stuff, and the PR is a little bit is like not in my wheelhouse and makes me a little bit uncomfortable. So I would say the most successful things we've done to build our audience has been through press coverage. So having especially at the institutions that we're based at. So Cornell wrote a really great article in the Chronicle about us when we were first getting started. The Harvard Gazette wrote an article, and those like quadrupled our subscriber numbers like overnight, and so that was really big. I'm working on, and I've been learning a lot along the way. Like for example, when we've filmed episodes at institutions that I haven't been affiliated with, it's been a little bit trickier to like sort of leverage the PR powers of those institutions that I thought it would be. So I'm sort of trying to get a little bit more savvy in how to do that. But just like staying engaged in social media and like having conversations on Twitter and on Facebook about what you're doing, and, you know, going and giving talks at schools and sort of making sure these resources are made available to people who might use them, like teachers and students. But yeah, it's something that I'm still getting a feel for and getting a handle on as well.
As a follow-up to that question, do you have some kind? So you have Science IRL as your brand, right? It's the brand of your YouTube channel. So when you're producing other resources that aren't YouTube videos, for instance, educational materials, do you also put it under the same Science IRL brand? Like, how do you get that information out there?
Do you mean like? You mean in terms of, like if I was doing like accompanying materials to a video or something like that?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do you get that information out there?
You know, I actually haven't done too much with like companion resources to video. Sometimes like within a video I'll link, you know, there's like a sort of room on the YouTube, like in the YouTube sort of interface underneath the video to link to resources that are relevant to a specific video, but I haven't done too much in terms of like creating companion materials to the videos themselves.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask a couple quick questions, and then I don't want to run out of time before we get to the technical discussion.
Sure.
So I know that'll be useful. So do you think it's worthwhile to spend funds to promote your videos? You know, you're always getting asked if you want to pay X amount of money to promote something.
Yeah.
Is that worthwhile?
You know, I haven't tried it, and I've been thinking more and more that it would be a good idea. I have some friends and family who work in PR and have said, like, you can really reach a lot of people if you pay $5 on Facebook to boost your post. So it's something I've been considering. Definitely. I think that might be the next time I get a grant or something, I might funnel some resources into that, or at least to the other thing is that, you know, sort of maintaining a constant presence on social media and like putting so much effort into sort of into these things is really time consuming, and I'm probably not doing it the most efficient way. So I'm curious to sort of even just sit down with you know, like a PR specialist or something for an hour and just be like, hey, like what could I be doing to maximize my time for the, you know, getting the most output out of this. But I do think it's probably worth it.
We'll have to follow up with you both after you put your video and after you talk to the PR specialist. Because the other question was, what are the best uses of social media, and how much time are you currently spending on social media?
Yes. You know, I use Facebook probably the least to promote. You know, I have a Facebook page. I put the videos up there. I post like big updates, like videos, or if there's press coverage or something, I'll post on Facebook. Instagram is great for like for screenshots of the videos and like, or like behind the scenes photos and like, this is what we were doing today on set, and that's kind of fun for engaging that audience. Instagram does not let you link to videos except like in a specific post. You can only have one link at the top of your profile, so every time you like have a new video out, you have to like change your profile description and stuff. So it's not great for integrating across platforms. Twitter is amazing just because the educational community is on Twitter a lot. So is like science Twitter is like a great thing. I mean, there's so many scientists on Twitter, and we're like always having a great time chatting about cool science things. And so I love Twitter for like quick conversations and sort of engaging with people, and, you know, giving other channels shout outs, or like you can even like initiate collaborations just via a Twitter conversation. And so I really like Twitter for those types of sort of more one-on-one engagements. And I think I probably now spend the most time on Twitter, like
Great.
sort of talking about YouTube and stuff.
All right, let's get techie.
All right. So
Yeah.
we're gonna switch over to the technical aspects.
Yes.
I think my backdrop might be falling down. All right. So the tech aspects of this video. So
Yeah.
I have nerded it up on YouTube and actually watched videos on YouTube about how to create. And there it goes. All right. Well, it's down now. So I've watched videos on YouTube about how to create videos on YouTube, right? And so one of the things that people talk about is cameras, right? So how do you what equipment are you using to film these different videos that you're making? So is there any particular camera that you use or that you recommend?
Yeah, so you know, a cell phone will get the job done these days, honestly. Like it's, you know, cell phone video quality is incredible, and if you want to start something and don't have funding to purchase a camera, like seriously, just start with your camera. It'll be great. When we were first starting out, we borrowed a lot of random cameras, mostly ones that were like, you know, lying around the lab, and so those tended to be DSLR cameras that were, you know, made really beautiful beautiful videos, but they're designed to take photographs, and so DSLRs, you can't plug audio channels into them, and so whenever we had to record the audio separately on a mic, and it's just like a little bit extra editing to kind of sync all of that stuff together, and you know, they're just not as maneuverable as a camcorder is. So when we got the grant, we bought a professional like compact camcorder from Sony called a PXW70, and that one's great because it has several inputs for our wireless microphones that we use to record sound. And so if I only have, you know, two people, me and a guest on the show, I don't have to sync. The audio is automatically synced to the camera, which is great. And those little professional camcorders do great images. They're really maneuverable. You can do a lot with them and get a good quality as well. But again, it's a professional camera. You definitely do not need to have one of those to start a great YouTube channel. We just took advantage of the fact that we had this grant and could afford to upgrade to professional production equipment.
So you film in multiple locations, right? Often. How do you get all of your stuff to the locations, right? So if you're doing
in a suitcase,
do you just like cram it all in like one suitcase and then just
so they're like nice suitcases that you can they look like normal suitcases on the outside, but inside they have all these like foam compartments for video editing, so for video equipment. So we use one of those to pack up. We fit our camera and our mics and everything in there. And we don't ever check it. We always carry it on. And you know, our lighting kit is not super transportable, so we don't usually bring our lights with us. I've been meaning to purchase a more transportable set of lighting equipment. I have to do that still. But so if we're flying, we do not bring our lights. But if we're just driving somewhere, we do.
Okay. Yeah. So one of the, you know, when I watch these YouTube videos about how to make YouTube channels, everybody says that lighting is one of the most critical components. So then if you don't bring your lighting with you, how do you, I guess as a broader question, right, how do you set the stage of a scene? How do you make sure that there's enough lighting? How do you make sure that it's not echoey?
Yeah. So we've sort of had to like just develop a certain level of chill with those things, because labs are like not designed to be good places to film. There are, you know, -80 freezers that are like, and then there are like 4-degree fridges that like keep ramping up and down into cooling cycles, and then the lab lights are like these horrible fluorescent terrible things. So we've just been like, you know what, it's gonna be fine. The mics have been super helpful. So having a nice set of wireless lav mics that are clip-on and sort of very close range, so that they're just picking up us and not the fridge, has been great. But again, like, you can also, like our first set of videos, you can hear the fridge in the background, and it's not the end of the world. In terms of lighting, when we're traveling, we have this great little actually it's quite big, but it folds up. It's this reflector disc that has it's just like sort of a hoop with like yeah, big circle with like different kind of reflective materials that you can zip on and off in exchange, and those will bounce back some light into your, like if you're not in a great place, they'll reflect light back at you or sort of divert light in ways that is a little bit better. So that's a great kind of quick fix if we're in a place that's not ideal when we're traveling. And then when we're not traveling, we have these big LED panels on tripods that you can kind of change. You can play with the warmth of the LED panel to cast a certain amount or warmth of light, and those have been nice.
When you're setting a scene for one of your videos, be it where it's just you and another scientist talking, or you're actually filming part of the experiment, how long does it take to set up that scene then? Right, if you have all this stuff, does it take a while? I would imagine it would take a while.
Yeah, like, so our shoots for, a 5 to 9 minute video, they take a full day, from like 9 a.m. to 5 or 7 p.m. So it's a long day of shooting. It takes probably an hour or two to get set up in the morning, and hopefully, like, if we're not traveling, hopefully we've been able to kind of get into the location and sort of see where we might want to set up.
Okay.
Yeah, but we also have complicated videos where we're doing experiments and stuff, so we'll usually do like a few angles of like us talking, and then we're actually in the lab doing the experiment, and we'll do some like over the shoulder shots or like close-ups of us actually doing the manipulations on the bench or in the field or whatever. But yeah, it does take a while. When we're shooting outside, it's like, because like we'll be like amidst the trees and the lights changing and everything. So some of it's just like, you know what? Or like, we'll fix it in post, because you can do a lot in editing software to like boost up the light if the sun went behind the clouds or whatever. So,
so as a nice segue, what kind of editing software do you use?
Yeah, I use Adobe Premiere Pro.
Okay.
That is what I've been trained on and what I know well. And there's like a lot of great YouTube videos about how. So if I ever like don't know how to do something in Adobe, I'll just go on YouTube and watch a tutorial video about how to do it. So there's a great sort of set of resources, but I'm assuming those resources are also there for most editing softwares. So you can start with iMovie, or there's another built-in software on Windows platforms too. So there's like the built-in softwares on laptops now are so great. Like you can do a lot with them.
Right. Yeah, because I know on my university campus at University of Georgia, Adobe Premiere Pro is available for all students.
Really?
Yeah, free to us. It's not for personal laptops, but it's based on any like desktop you have in the building.
Nice.
It's already built into that
to
that desktop. But if you're not part of a university system, I know from personal experience that Adobe programs cost a lot.
They do. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess iMovie would be another, or whatever the Windows alternative is. Movie Maker, I think, is what it's called.
Yeah.
Would be the alternative, right?
Yeah, and you can like most of what I'm doing is slicing and dicing and moving around, and you can do all those things in
all of
those programs. Yeah.
So how do you decide when you want to keep a segment or when you want to chuck a segment?
Oh, it's so hard. I'm editing this video right now that we shot at the Arnold Arboretum at Harvard University, and it's like we talked about so many great things, and when I put it all in the editing software, the episode was like 12 minutes long, and so I had to cut some. I was just like, yep, this has got to go. Sort of just deciding what's central to your narrative. It's like, we had a lot of cool stuff about like the history of plant exploration at the Arboretum, which is really exciting. But we were mostly focused on like what kind of science projects happen using the accessions at the Arboretum. So we were like, all right, that's got to be our central narrative, and we have to keep those bits and sort of cut some of the other things. So.
Right, but there's nothing that says you can't reuse that cut segment for something else.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah, and we were even talking about like, oh, maybe if we have a website one day or something, we can put like bonus footage somewhere, or like have little bits.
Right.
Yeah.
So then, do you write, when you're writing scripts for your episodes, do you write them like as a whole, and then you film to that script?
Yeah. So
ad-lib?
In the beginning, we sort of did more of an outline, because we didn't want to have the conversations between me and the guest scientist seem too like scripted or forced.
Yeah.
But it just got to a point where like we were sort of sometimes figuring out like we were like, what do we say? Like and it just made the shoots go a lot longer because we would be like, oh, wait, this doesn't sound right. And so so we've settled on like having a script finalized before and doing even a read through if possible with the guest scientist before we shoot to make sure things are flowing and sort of get a rough idea of how long. Though like a read through is never going to be the final length of the actual cut, and that's been a lot smoother. So.
Right. So I know we're kind of running out of time, so I want to ask one last question on tech specs that I have, and then we'll kick it over to other questions. So what kind of audio do you use? You've mentioned a couple times that you have wireless mics, but is there any brand?
Yeah, we use a I think it's I don't know how to, is it Sennheiser? We have a link to it, I think. It's a wireless lav mic that a friend of mine who works in audio engineering, he was like, this is the one you want. So we got that one, and it's great. It's great. I mean, it really they are really magical for getting rid of background. You know, there's still every once in a while, if it's a really old clunky fridge, you're still gonna hear that in the background. But
sweet hum.
Yeah, yeah. But it's.
How much? So you had mentioned that for editing purposes for audio, that you try to have the audio like sync automatically with the video, right? But do you ever have instances where you have to go in and physically edit the audio itself? Like for instance,
yeah, for sure.
So then what
I'm not adept enough at like audio editing is a whole other ball game, and I'm not super skilled in that. But so I wouldn't know how to like filter out a hum from audio, but I can like raise levels if one person is talking a little bit quieter, or sort of figure out how to cut weird little bits of sound if there was a if the mic, like, there was some static or something and you need to figure out how to shuffle stuff around to make it work, like, I can do that. But I would not be able to edit out background.
From my experience in podcast editing, I use Audacity to edit audio. And for those interested, for our listeners, Audacity is a free program. You can just download it off the internet. It's a pretty decent audio editor.
Oh, cool. Okay.
I don't know how it compares to if you can edit audio in Adobe Premiere Pro, for instance, but Audacity is pretty nice for editing audio if you only have audio. Cool.
Oh, nice.
I think, I think that was it for tech questions. I think we'll turn it over in the last couple minutes to other questions.
Okay, we had a question about choosing the topics that you want to cover. How do you know if it's going to be interesting? What do you use to gauge whether this topic is appropriate for your channel and whether it'll work?
Yeah, I usually, I'll start by having a nice long Skype meeting with the guest scientist, and you can usually tell, like, there's going to be a story that they're super excited about, like more so maybe than the other ones, or there's something where they can kind of tell a more complete story at that moment. And also, sometimes I'll think about, like, oh, I've kind of touched on this topic in another video, so maybe it won't be as fresh and exciting, so let's do this other thing. Or like, oh gosh, this is so complicated in this experiment. There's just so much background required for people to understand what's going on here that it's just going to get bogged down in intro stuff. But it's really just like enthusiasm and passion from the person who will be joining me. If I can get a sense of how much background is going to be required to make it accessible to an audience who has like roughly a high school understanding of science, and then do I think this is going to be something we can fit into 7 minutes? Granted, we did an experiment about, an episode about in situ hybridizations, which is an experiment that takes 3 days and has like, a bazillion ridiculous steps in it, and like we just turned it into a joke. So like whenever we had to do all of the like dehydration or rehydration ethanol series, we did them like really like sped up super fast, or like we like danced around the lab and like had everything like sped up. So we can make some things work, but other things may not. Yeah.
Okay, and we had another question on cameras. So you had mentioned that fairly early on you bought sounds like a really great camera. Would a phone work?
Yeah, no, totally, yes. Like, I definitely want to emphasize that professional equipment is like not at all required to do to do a YouTube channel. And in fact, some of my episodes have been filmed on cell phones, like season 1, episode 5, where I interviewed a bunch of like women at various stages of their careers in science. A lot of those were filmed on cell phones or webcams. And then I think we did an episode with Dennis Stevenson at the New York Botanical Garden, and it wasn't filmed on a cell phone, but it was filmed on a really old digital camera, and it was fine. Like, yeah. So I mean, do whatever tools you have. And also, what's really cool is, especially if people watching are based at a university, I guarantee you there's someone on your campus who has nice video equipment. So when I first came to Harvard and like didn't have a grant yet, I was like trying to see if I could find some better equipment. I got connected to a filmmaker at the Harvard Center for the Environment who was making environmental films and educational films, but he had all these beautiful microphones that he wasn't using every day, and so he lent them to me, and it was great because I all of a sudden had these really great mics that I could use when I needed to make episodes here. So, you know, just see like who do you know who's on campus. You know, maybe your friend has a random microphone sitting around. So there are definitely like sort of clever ways to get the resources that you need. Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard that over and over again, you know, when we have various conversations, is find the people on campus. And there's often a whole office full of people waiting for stories to tell, right, who can help you or promote you or whatever. So we had,
you know,
go on.
Sorry. Oh, yeah, I also, in case people are thinking like starting a whole YouTube channel sounds daunting or something, I do want to also suggest 2 alternatives to like ways that you can kind of test the waters of YouTube and see how you like it. So one is you don't have to make a whole channel. You don't have to like be releasing episodes every week or every month or whatever. You can like just start with one video. Maybe you have an idea of like a topic that you're really interested in, or you think people don't understand super well and you have a way of explaining it that you think really works, and just like try it. Just make one video and, you know, put it up there and see what happens. Don't worry about like creating a whole brand and everything right away. You can see how your channel evolves. And the other thing is, especially if you're a scientist looking, you know, writing an NSF or some kind of grant that needs broader impact requirements, write a current YouTuber into your grant and initiate a collaboration, right? You like that those people already have a whole channel, like, and a whole audience base established, and so your video, by collaborating with those people, you'll reach thousands of people like immediately, and you'll be working with a YouTuber who knows how to make great content, and so you can kind of see like what that process is like in terms of writing and being on an episode and everything, and just try it out. And then, you know, if you want to like take that somewhere, go for it. So there are definitely ways to like be on YouTube and kind of do these types of things without like going all in and committing to a channel right away.
Awesome. I think we have to wrap up, but I just wanted to mention that Jen Robinson, who I'm sure you know from Twitter, mentioned in the comments that her whole channel is created using her cell phone. So,
yeah, hers is a great, totally. Yeah.
She shared a link in the comments section.
Yeah.
And I know we'll have some follow-up questions, so I hope that we can feed them to you through Planté.
That would be great.
Rishi?
Perfect. I mean, that's all the questions I have. Molly, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you, Rishi. This was a great conversation. I'm so glad we got to do this. Yeah.
Melanie, I don't know if there's any outro stuff that you want to talk about.
No, I just wanted to sum it up and thank you both very much, for Rishi for doing the interview and Molly for answering everybody's questions. I think there were a lot of great questions asked today, and I think you gave a lot of really, really good advice for everybody. I want to thank everyone for attending our seminar today. And like Mary mentioned, we're going to go ahead and post the recording link in the Plantain community in the next couple of days. We'll try and add some of these resources too, especially sharing a lot of links for some of maybe the YouTube accounts, Molly, that you suggested, and also to some of the suggested equipment and some of the equipment that you use. So just look for an email with that information, and also look for emails announcing registration for future seminars. And if you have any topics, if you have any ideas for topics you'd like to see in 2018, we're building our calendar up now. So definitely email us at community@plantain.org so we can consider everything. And again, our follow-up email will include this information, and we hope to continue the conversation with Molly and Rishi. And also, we'd love to hear your ideas and your questions, about this topic. So thank you, everybody, and have a great day.
Thanks, guys.